Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something a little different. We're tossing you straight into the mud-soaked boots of a medieval peasant. Yep, no time machine safety nets here. Just you, a threadbare tunic, and the unholy stench of your neighbors. Picture this. It's pitch black. Your skin itches from the straw mattress crawling with bugs, and the smoky air inside your one-room hovel is thicker than soup. There's no alarm clock, just the guttural coughing of someone with what is either a cold or the plague. Maybe both. Either way, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it in your corner of the world? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake in near darkness. The air inside your cottage is so smoky, your eyes burn before you even sit up. There's a central fire pit smoldering in the middle of the room, but the chimney? That's a luxury someone else has. Your only vent is a tiny hole in the ceiling, and it's doing the absolute least. You cough once, then again, and then groan as your back protests because you've just slept on a pile of straw infested with lice, fleas, and maybe a rat or two. The bed is a wooden plank with that sad excuse for a mattress tossed on top, and your pillow is a sack of dried peas. Congratulations. You're already itchy, and you haven't even stood up yet. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not I should put on a sweater cold. This is medieval cold. The kind that bites your bones and makes you consider setting your own hair on fire for warmth. It's February, maybe March, or was it April already? Doesn't matter. You can't read a calendar anyway. Time is measured in how long your fingers take to go numb. You swing your legs off the bed and jam your feet into your only pair of leather shoes, still damp from yesterday's trudge through mud and sheep droppings. They squelch slightly. Charming. Now, take a deep breath. Not a good idea, actually. The entire one-room hut smells like boiled cabbage, goat, and wet wool, with a faint undertone of mildew and possibly despair. And remember, this hovel isn't just yours. It's home to your parents, your siblings, one of your grandparents, and maybe the pidge if it hasn't been eaten yet. Privacy is a myth. Personal space? Also a myth. Someone is snoring loudly behind you, while another body rustles in the corner, fumbling with chamber pot logistics. Speaking of which nature calls. And no, you're not strolling into a tiled bathroom with a nightlight. The chamber pot is somewhere under the bed, and let's just say you'll be stepping very carefully. If you're lucky, it didn't overflow during the night. Historians still argue whether most medieval peasants had a consistent system for waste disposal, or just a toss it out the window and hope for rain strategy. Either way, sanitation is a distant dream. In some places, whole streets were known to smell so bad they inspired prayers. Real prayers. You stumble to the door, latch creaking, and step outside. The cold punches you again, and your breath puffs out in small clouds. There's no sunrise yet, just a dull gray glow behind the hills. And mud. So much mud. Medieval England, for example, was basically a giant squish fest for 9 months of the year. You slip slightly, grab onto the doorframe, and curse under your breath. Not out loud, though. You're still trying to avoid eternal damnation for saying, "Buy my troth," with too much sass. A rooster crows. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks, then yelps, possibly kicked for stealing someone's breakfast again. Chickens wander underfoot. You take a few steps to stretch your legs, stepping carefully around puddles that are half water, half livestock runoff. A rooster eyes you suspiciously. You glare back. You will not be defeated by poultry today. You're not exactly sure what time it is, but judging by the sound of your neighbor chopping wood and the faint clang of a blacksmith 2 houses down, it's probably close to dawn, which means you'll be working soon, whether in the fields, at the loom, or shoveling something unspeakable. But before that, you've got to find water. clean water. Well, cleanish. A few minutes walk from your home okay. It's more like a shuffle through icy mud. You arrive at the communal well. The handle is frozen. You chip at it with a rock, teeth chattering. Eventually, with enough cursing and sheer willpower, you manage to lower the bucket. It sloshes back up with water that smells faintly of iron and something you're not going to think about. This is your drinking water, washing water, and probably also someone's bath water yesterday. Cheers. Mainstream historical fact time. Most peasants lived in houses made of wattle and daub, essentially woven wood, slathered with a mix of mud, straw, and, yes, dung. Very sustainable, very flammable, and very good at trapping heat in the summer and not a thing in the winter. You trudge back toward your hut, water sloshing, feet already soaked. Somewhere along the path you remember, you still haven't had breakfast, but that's tomorrow's horror show. For now, your top priority is to not freeze to death before you even start your day. As you approach your hovel again, you hear someone coughing violently inside. Not the polite, clearing your throat kind of cough. This one sounds deep, rattly, and suspiciously tubercular. It's just part of the soundscape here, like birdsong or the occasional scream from the manor dungeon. Oh, and fun fact, some people stuff lavender or dried herbs under their mattresses to try and ward off the lice and bedbugs. Did it work? Not really, but it smelled slightly better than the mildew. You step inside, close the creaky wooden door, and prepare yourself for whatever Miller punishment awaits. The sun's rising, and your chances of surviving today aren't. The good news? You're about to eat. The bad news? You're about to eat medieval breakfast. And spoiler alert, you are not starting the day with pancakes and coffee. There is no fluffy omelet waiting on a warm plate. There's no plate, actually. What you're handed by your mother, older sibling, or whoever is closest to the bubbling cauldron in the center of the room is a wooden bowl of something that might once have been oats. It's grayish, lumpy, and gives off the kind of smell that suggests it's both food and punishment. This is gruel. It's water and crushed grain, maybe a touch of barley or rye if you're lucky. No sugar, no fruit, definitely no milk, because the only cow in the village dried up months ago. You lift a spoonful to your mouth and instantly regret it. It's lukewarm, slimy, and gritty enough to exfoliate your tongue. But you choke it down, because there's nothing else. Breakfast is not about enjoyment here. It's about survival. Some mornings, you might get a bit of stale bread to dip in ithered as brick and probably made 3 days ago. Or worse, a piece of black bread, made with low-quality flour, full of coarse bits, and sometimes stretched with ingredients like ground-up bark or beans. People did what they had to. In famines, they got very creative. Historians still argue whether those odd additives were survival tactics or early forms of culinary experimentation. Either way, they were unpleasant at best and toxic at worst. And meat, the stuff of fantasy. You might get meat on a feast day, or if something dies unexpectedly, like that goose that flew into the side of the mill last year. Otherwise, your protein options include fish, lentils if available, and the occasional squirrel if your dad still has good aim with a sling. Today, as a special treat, there's a sliver of salted pork. You chew it slowly. It's so tough your jaw cramps after 2 bites, and you're not entirely sure it hasn't turned. The salt is intention of the only preservatives available, but is done little to improve the texture. Honestly, it tastes like regret and rope. Still, this is a luxury. There are whole seasons when salted pork is a rumor, and meals are just soup-stained memories. Hunger is a constant companion, especially for the lower classes. And remember, you're one of those. You wash it down with small beer, not to be confused with modern ale. This stuff has barely any alcohol, which is good, because you're a child. Or maybe an adult. No one really knows your age. People didn't keep track. unless you were nobility. You're just vaguely young or getting old. Anyway, small beer is the drink of the day because it's safer than water. Boiling the mash kills the worst of the bacteria, which is more than can be said for the well. You burp quietly and feel it come back up a little. Perfect. Then it's time to clean up, which means licking your bowl, not joking, giving it a swipe with a rag, and hanging it back on the wall. You're out of spoons, so your younger brother eats with his hands. Again, your dog stares at you through the door, hoping for scraps. You give him the gristly bit of pork rind, and he bolts away like he just won the lottery. Outside, the village is waking up. Smoke curls from crooked chimneys. A baby's crying somewhere nearby, goats are bleeding, and the smell of manure is thick and unapologetic. You grab your cloak, really just a rectangle of itchy wool with a hole in the middle, and head out. Breakfast is over, and the sun has decided to finally peek over the tree line just in time to blind you. Your walk to work is short because everything's close in the village, but the road is clogged with other people, chickens, and carts full of turnips. You nod to old Edric, the toothless man who smells like pickled onions and once claimed he met a real witch. He winks. You shiver. You pass by the baker's hut, and your stomach growls again. The smell of hot bread makes your gruel feel even gruelier. But bread is expensive. A single loaf could cost you half a day's wages. Still, if you're lucky, you might barter something later firewood or labor in exchange for the day-old stuff. Quirky tidbit of the day. In some parts of Europe, there were laws about the size and price of bread. The size of bread in ale, for example, regulated bakers and punished those who shorted customers. Historians still debate how strictly those rules were enforced, or whether bakers got away with sneakily hollow loaves. You wouldn't put it past them. Just before you reach the fields, you pass the communal oven. It's a shared resource in many towns, of massive stone furnace where families bake their own dough on designated days. It's still warm from last night's batch, and you pause to soak in the heat for one glorious second before someone behind you grumbles, "Move along!" You do, because stalling means wasting time, and wasting time means you might lose your daily portion of bread, or worse, be docked wages you never really see anyway. Your labor belongs to the lord of the manor. He owns the land, the crops, the animals, and pretty much your entire existence. You might technically be free, but let's be real, you've got about as much autonomy as that goat nibbling on a fence post. Your stomach is now making protest noises, but the workday has begun. You're already tired, still hungry, and dreaming of a world where breakfast doesn't taste like soggy cardboard. You reach your assigned patch of land, greet your fellow peasants with a tired nod, and start your daily grind. The sun is barely up, but your legs ache already, and you can still feel the taste of that questionable pork in your throat. That was breakfast. And you'll be thinking about it all day, not because it was good, but because it's the only thing you're eating until sunset. You know that cozy morning bathroom routine you take for granted? The one with running water, soft toilet paper, maybe even a warm towel? Yeah, forget all that. In medieval times, personal hygiene is a concept with very loose definitions, more of a vibe than a practice. And today, your vibe is grimy but trying. Let's start with the obvious. You need to relieve yourself. If you're lucky, and let's be honest, you're not. You've got access to a wooden outhouse shared by several families. It's basically a drafty little shed with a bench, a hole, and a smell that could melt iron. But more likely, you're dealing with a chamber pot, yes. That same one from under the bed. It's still half full from last night's communal usage, and no one's volunteered to empty it yet. So, you pick it up, grimacing, and shuffle toward the back of your home where there's a shallow pit. You tip the contents in with as little splashing as possible. A swarm of flies takes off like you just disturbed a tiny airport. Congratulations, you're now part of the local waste management system. You rinse the pot with a bit of your precious well water and set it back under the bed. Not because it's clean, because it's less dirty now. Next up, washing your face. There's no mirror, of course. Just a dented piece of polished metal if you're lucky, and that's mostly used to check if you still have all your teeth. You splash your face with frigid water from a wooden bucket. It's shockingly cold, like the ice bucket challenge, but somehow less refreshing. Your skin tightens, your fingers go numb, and you're pretty sure this counts as your bath for the week. Soap? Occasionally, yes, but it's homemade and harsh. Made from animal fat and ash, it scrubs off the top layer of skin along with any dirt. You use it sparingly because it's hard to come by and leaves you smelling faintly of bacon and fireplace. Historians still argue whether medieval people cared about being clean or just tolerated the dirt. There's evidence that bathhouses were common in towns, especially in early medieval periods, but also that later plagues and church warnings about nudity turned people off the idea of full-on bathing. Either way, you are not bathing today, or this week, maybe next festival day, maybe. Your breath, by the way, could kill a dragon. There's no toothpaste, no floss, and your gums are looking rough. You chew on a twig literally. People used chew sticks to clean their teeth, stripping the bark and fraying the end to create a kind of makeshift brush. You rub it across your molars, gag slightly at the taste, and try to ignore the sharp pain in your back tooth. That's an issue for future you and for future you's inevitable encounter with a guy holding pliers and a flask of ale. And your clothes? Still filthy. You shake them out a bit and hope no mice crawl out. You wore them yesterday, and the day before, and probably all last week. Laundry isn't a daily affair, it's more of a community event every few weeks, assuming the river isn't frozen and someone's willing to pound clothes on a rock for 3 hours. Your undergarments if you have thamar made of coarse linen. They're itchy, slightly damp, and smell faintly of fermented cabbage. Over that goes your tunic, also linen, maybe wool in colder weather. The color? A sad, faded brownish gray. Most people wear undyed fabric, unless they're wealthy enough for greens or blues. Anything vibrant means you're either rich or accidentally rolled in berries. You loop a bit of rope around your waist to cinch it all together. It's not exactly high fashion, but at least it keeps your outfit from catching fire in the hearth. Hopefully. Now let's talk hair. Yours is oily, tangled, and may have a few surprise visitors. Lice are a fact of life here. Everyone has them. Some people even keep a knit comb on hand, basically a tiny torture device for dragging eggs out of your scalp. You rake it through your hair, wincing, and pull out something that wriggles. You flick it off. You're numb to the horror by now. To keep lice away, some people rub their scalps with vinegar or lavender oil. You, tragically, have neither. You do your best with fingers and willpower. Hats help. You grab your coif, a tight-fitting cloth cap that makes you look like an underpaid kitchen worker, which you are, and pull it on. Congratulations. You now look exactly like everyone else. There's no deodorant, obviously. Most people mask body odor with herbs or just pretend they can't smell anything. Scented pouches, little cloth bags filled with dried flowers or spiceair, sometimes worn around the neck, but they're for the well-off. You are wearing Oda. It's been a week. You glance at your hands, which are already rough and cracked from labor. No lotion exists, unless you count animal fat. And yes, some people did rub that on their skin. Is it moisturizing? Technically. Is it revolting? Absolutely. And remember that fun fact about medieval perfumes being made with ambergris? Yeah, that's whale vomit. Fancy nobles might dab a bit on their wrists. You will never touch the stuff unless you fall into the ocean and a whale gets creative. Still, despite it all, there's a sense of routine here. You scrub what you can, pull your garments into place, and try to ignore the fact that your neighbor's goat is staring at you while relieving itself in your direction. You've done your best. You've emptied your chamber pot, washed your face, chewed your stick, and combed your hair with a rake. You're now what passes for fresh in medieval terms, which means still kind of disgusting, but slightly less likely to be accused of harboring demons, and you're off, ready to tackle a day in the fields, in town, or if the stars are leaning a church errand that might take you near the bakery again. You catch a glimpse of yourself in a puddle and grimace. It's going to be a long day. You think your job is hard? Try surviving a day in the medieval workplace, if you can even call it that. There are no ergonomic chairs, no HR department, no paid breaks with oat milk lattes. Just you, the blistering sun, and work so physically punishing you start dreaming of becoming a rock. You're a peasant, which means your job is everything. You rise with the sun and collapse after it sets, and in between, you farm, mend, chop, haul, build, dig, and possibly get kicked by a donkey. It's not a 9 to 5. It's an always. Today, you're in the fields, and it's not the romantic kind of field with wheat dancing gently in the breeze. It's more like ankle-deep mud, a broken plowshare, and a group of villagers arguing over whose turn it is to chase the crows away. Spoiler, it's yours. You trudge through the muck, squinting at the half-dead barley you're expected to coax into something edible. The soil is stubborn, your tools are laughably bad, and your back already feels like it belongs to someone 3 decades older. Your job is determined not by passion or skill, but by need. You're here because someone has to be, and you're not wealthy or skilled enough to be anything else. Even so, each role has its own slice of medieval misery. If you're a woman, you might be spinning wool from sunup to sundown, endless, mind-numbing process that ruins your posture and your patience. If you're a child, guess what? You work too. There are no child labor laws. You're small enough to crawl into dangerous places. So, congratulations, you're now in charge of clearing soot from the oven chimney. Fun historical tidbit. Children in towns sometimes worked as turnspit boys, running on a giant hamster wheel-like device that turned roasting meat over a fire. It was hot, monotonous, and so unpleasant that the job was eventually replaced by dogs. Yes, dogs. But back to you. You're hacking at weeds with a sickle, your palms blistered, your neck sunburned, and your stomach growling. Your only company is a few crows and your neighbor Godric, who hasn't said a word since 1323. Every hour drips by like honey in winter. You're sweating buckets, but you can't afford to stop. You were supposed to meet your week's labor quota for the lord of the manor. Those are the corvée days. You don't get paid for those. You just do them to avoid punishment. Historians still argue whether peasants had any true leisure at all, or just short bursts of exhaustion where no one was yelling at them. And speaking of the Lord, you can see his manor up on the hill with its stone walls and tiled roof. You imagine him sipping wine and laughing at your bent-over posture. He probably is. He might even own your shoes. That's not a joke. Lords sometimes supply clothing to their peasants, usually in exchange for loyalty or additional labor. So even your threadbare tunic might technically be company property. You try to distract yourself by singing, but your throat's dry and your voice sounds like a goat being stepped on. So instead, you think about what you'd like to be doing. Maybe a skilled trade? Being a blacksmith seems cool. You imagine hammering iron on an anvil, sparks flying, muscles rippling until you remember that blacksmiths inhale toxic fumes, burn themselves constantly, and go deaf by age 35. What about being a monk? All that reading and writing. But literacy is rare, and you've never even seen parchment. Plus, monks still work. They garden, cook, copy books for hours by candlelight, and, oh yes, wake up in the middle of the night to chant. You'd fall asleep face first into your psalter. You could join a guild if you're in a city, but you're not. You're a villager, and the nearest town is 2 days away by donkey. And even if you were in town, you'd have to train as an apprentice for years. probably under a cranky old leather worker who calls you boy no matter your gender and throws scraps at you when he's mad. At some point, you step wrong and twist your ankle. No surprise there. The field is littered with stones and molehills, and your shoes are more holes than leather. You sit down, cursing under your breath, and try to stretch it out, but you can't stop long. The foreman is walking around with a stick and a scowl. He grunts at you to get moving. You do limping because the alternative is getting docked a ration of bread or worse, having your name added to the lazy list. That's not official, of course, but the village remembers. They always remember. By midday, your fingers are bleeding. You've pricked them on thorns while gathering kindling for the cook fires. The sun is directly overhead, and it feels like someone's holding a magnifying glass to your skull. There's no sunscreen, though here's a quirky factancient text mention people using weird substances to block sunburn, like crocodile dung. Yup, you smear that on your face if you've got it. You don't. Eventually, someone rings the bell for a meal break. You're not sure how long you've been working. There are no clocks, just sun position and your own sense of despair. You sit with the others, chewing on yesterday's bread and sharing a few words. Mostly complaints about the weather, the tools, or that one guy who always slacks off. Then, back to it. No siestas here. The afternoon brings a new task, hauling water from the stream for the animals. It's a mile down and the buckets are heavier than your hopes. You stumble, spill half of it, and sigh. Then do it again. And again. At last, as the sun tilts toward the trees, someone mutters that the day's nearly done. Your arms are jelly, your back is fused into a question mark, and you're pretty sure your ankle has developed its own personality. You walk back home slowly, dragging your feet, covered in dirt, hay, and something you hope is just mud. The Lord got his work. You got some bread. That's the exchange. You pass the miller's house on your way. He's better off than most mills make money, and he's got fancy boots. You hear that he uses 2 spoons. Wow. You get back, drop your gear, and flop down on a bench like a sack of laundry. No one says anything. Everyone looks the same, half dead and half baked under the fading sun. This was a normal workday. Not a holiday, not a punishment, not a crisis. Just the regular grind. And you're already dreading tomorrow, dinner time. Or, as it should probably be called, whatever we can boil and chew tonight. You're sore, you're dirty, and you're starving. But before you even think about eating, there's more work to be done. The evening chores don't care how tired you are, they still need doing. You refill the hearth, rake the ashes, chase the chickens back into their coop, and try not to get pecked in the process. You step in something unpleasant. Again, when it's finally time to eat, the meal is humble. You sit at a rough wooden table with your family if you have or maybe with a group of others you share a house with. It's not quiet. Babies cry, someone's arguing about who forgot to fetch firewood, and the dog has stolen a turnip off someone's plate. Again, on the menu tonight, pottage. It's what's always on the menu. Pottage is the ultimate medieval comfort food / survival mush. Picture a thick stew made from whatever you manage to find or grow. Cabbage, onions, leeks, barley, maybe a carrot if someone got lucky. No meat unless someone caught a rabbit or found something suspiciously unidentifiable in the woods. It simmers all day in a big pot with new ingredients tossed in whenever they appear, so the flavor is complex, like a mystery, a lukewarm, chunky mystery. You dunk a hunk of stale brown bread into the stew and chew slowly. The bread is dense, coarse, and might break a tooth. It's made from a mix of grains rye, barley, maybe some wheat if you're lucky. It also contains grit. Yes, actual grit. Grinding grain with stone querns meant tiny bits of rock often got into the flour. Medieval dentists read anyone with strong arms and pliers made good money because of this. You sip weak ale to wash it down. That's right ale. It's not about getting tipsy though. Water isn't always safe to drink, especially in towns where waste seeps into rivers. Ale is boiled and fermented, making it more sanitary. It's weak, cloudy, and often sour. Children drink it. Grandparents drink it. You drink it because the alternative is intestinal chaos. Historians still argue whether the average peasant diet was enough to survive on. Some say people managed surprisingly well with access to vegetables, grains, and dairy when available. Others argue malnutrition was rampant, especially during famines and bad harvest years. Either way, your belly is never quite full. You're always a little bit hungry, and tonight is no exception. You glance around the table. Your younger sibling is trying to sneak a second helping. An older neighbor is telling the same story about the fox in the chicken coop for the 100th time. The fire crackles. A flea bites your ankle, you chew. Let's say, just for fun, you're not a peasant tonight. Maybe you're in a bustling medieval town or part of the merchant class. You might be eating something slightly fancier. Roast goose, cheese, maybe even some dried fruit. If you're wealthy enough to afford spices, your food has actual flavor. Cinnamon, nutmeg, saffron, they're exotic and expensive, brought in along trade routes that span continents. To own them is a status symbol. To use them, that's showing off. Here's a quirky little fact. Upper-class people sometimes ate live blackbirds baked into pies. Not for taste, just for the dramatic reveal. You slice open the crust and surprise, birds fly out. It's more medieval TikTok prank than gourmet experience. But you're not eating birds or spiced pears. You're scraping the bottom of the pottage pot with a wooden spoon and pretending it's enough. You're also eating with your hands. Forks aren't common yet. Most people use a spoon and a knife or just their fingers. You wipe your greasy hand on your tunic, which already has 6 stains of unknown origin. There's no refrigeration, of course. Food is preserved with salt, smoke, drying, or burying it in cold earth. That means winter meals are often salted meats, root vegetables, and dried beans. Not glamorous, but they don't kill you. Usually. You clean your bowl with a crust of bread, then lick your fingers. No dishwasher, no napkins. You pass the bowl to someone else, and they eat from it. Germ theory isn't a thing yet. Colds pass around like party invitations. And if you are lucky enough to eat meat, it depends heavily on your status. Nobles eat beef, venison, boar, and game birds. You eat pig snout, or boiled sheep stomach, or eel pie. People eat the entire animal because nothing goes to waste lungs, brains, feet. If it's chewable, it's edible. On special days, feast days, weddings, or holidays, you might get something sweet, honey cakes, or maybe a fruit tart if apples are in season. But sugar, that's luxury level stuff. Imported, rare, and more valuable than gold by weight. You might live your whole life and never taste it. You sit for a while after dinner. There's no television, no phones, no books, unless you've somehow learned to read and have access to one of the few that exist. So people talk, sing, gossip, and sometimes play music if someone owns an instrument or can fake it with a spoon in a bowl. You hear stories passed down through generations. Tales of saints, monsters, distant wars, and local scandals like the time 2 villagers dueled with pitchforks over a goat. That one's a favorite. The room darkens quickly. Candles are rare and expensive, so you mostly rely on the firelight. If you have tallow lamps made from animal fat, they smell like a greasy barn. The flickering shadows stretch long across the walls, and you can already feel the cold seeping in through the cracks in the wood. You yawn. The meal was filling enough to take the edge off your hunger, but not enough to fuel dreams of anything grand. Your body aches from work, and the thought of crawling into your straw-stuffed mattress is suddenly very appealing. As you blow out the lamp or poke at the fire's embers, you think about tomorrow. It will look a lot like today, early, hard, and uncertain. But for now, your belly's warm, the room's quiet, and no one's yelling about turnips. You survived the evening meal, barely, and that's saying something. Bedtime. Finally. But don't get too excited. It's not exactly the cozy, memory foam luxury blanket setup you're imagining. Your bed is a wooden frame or maybe just a sack of straw tossed in a corner. If you're lucky, there's a thin mattress stuffed with hay, wool, or feathers, though feathers usually just means whatever the chickens left behind. The smell is earthy, musty, and definitely not lavender scented. You share your sleeping space. Of course you do. Privacy isn't really a thing in the medieval world. Families, sometimes multiple familia, share a single room. Parents, kids, grandparents, and whoever else happens to be staying. You all sleep side by side like sardines. No earplugs, no white noise machines, just snoring, coughing, the occasional baby wailing, and the soft scratching of fleas. And yes, you probably have fleas and lice and bed bugs. Personal hygiene is, let's say, ambitious. You scratch your neck and wonder if that crawling sensation is real. It probably is. Before sleep, there's a little routine toss, some extra logs on the fire if you've got any, lock the door if there is a door, and say a quick prayer. Nighttime is when demons and bad luck are thought to roam freely. You cross yourself and whisper a few words to ward off evil, just in case. You try to get comfortable. The straw pokes through the thin sheet and jabs you in the back. You shift, then shift again. Someone elbows you in the ribs. A dog curls up at your feet, then farts. Loudly. You try not to gag. Outside, the village begins to sleep. The fire dims to embers. The moon peeks through the small shuttered window if your home has and everything settles into darkness. But restful? Not quite. Because sleep in the medieval world doesn't come in one neat block. Historians still argue whether people naturally woke up in the middle of the night, what some call segmented sleep. There are records of folks rising for an hour or two after first sleep to pray, talk, even visit neighbors. Imagine doing your laundry at 2 a.m. because, well, you're awake and the moonlight is decent. You might toss and turn, especially in winter when it's freezing cold. Your breath fogs in front of your face, and you burrow deeper into your blanket or the shared family quilt that smells faintly of turnips and sweat. In summer, it's the opposite. No air circulation. Just heat, bugs, and the occasional midnight chicken squawk. And then there are the dreams, or nightmares. People believe that dreams carry omens, and you might wake up convinced that your strange vision about a bleeding tree or a headless goose means something horrible is coming. You mumble a quick Hail Mary and try to go back to sleep. If you're of a higher class, say, a merchant or miner, noble, your sleeping arrangement is better. Slightly. You might have a real bed with a mattress, blankets, even a canopy to trap warmth. You might sleep in a separate room from your servants, but you still wake up itching. You still hear rats in the walls. You still worry about thieves, curses, or fire breaking out in the night. Ah yes, fire. Homes are heated with open hearths and candles. That means every night carries a tiny thread of fiery doom. A stray spark, a kicked over lamp, a careless snore near the ember sand, the whole house goes up. Many medieval towns suffer devastating fires. It's part of life. People often sleep in wool nightclothes because wool smolders instead of igniting quickly. That's your medieval fire safety tip of the night. Some people sleep on benches or directly on the floor. Servants often curl up in corners. And if you're a traveler, your bed could be a pile of hay in someone's stable if you're lucky enough to get permission. Inns are few, expensive, and mostly terrible. Think bedbugs, drunken brawls, and maybe a pig wandering through your room. Back to you. You're drifting in and out. The fire crackles softly. Someone nearby snores like a broken bellows. A baby stirs. You scratch your leg again. You're sure something's crawling down there, but you're too tired to check. Then you wake up with a start, a noise outside, a howl, a thief. You strain your ears. Just a dog. Maybe. You shift positions. Now your hips pressing into a knot of straw. Someone mumbles in their sleep. You try not to think about tomorrow. It'll start before dawn. Again. With a grumpy rooster and a backache. Again. The darkness feels heavier in medieval times. There's no electric glow from streetlights or passing cars. Just pure, inky black, punctuated by the occasional flicker of moonlight or the haunting call of an owl. It's peaceful, yes, but also eerie. You feel like something might be watching, but it's probably just the cat. Here's a fun tidbit. People used to believe that nightmares were caused by demons sitting on your chest while you slept. They called it sleep paralysis, though they didn't understand the term. Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, unable to move, feeling like something heavy is crushing you, and then blaming it on a goblin named Mare. That's actually where the word nightmare comes from. Eventually, despite the noise, the itching, the straw, and the gnawing cold, you doze off. Your dreams are strange a donkey with your neighbor's face, a fish wearing a crown, a never-ending line of laundry. Then, as if time skips a beat, it's morning. Gray light creeps through the shutters. A rooster crows like it's auditioning for a medieval boy band. Someone's already stoking the fire. Another day has begun. You ache everywhere. Your neck, your knees, your feet. You sit up slowly and immediately regret it. Your hair's a mess. Your tunic smells like someone else's breakfast. And you realize you didn't sleep well. You just survived the night. And now it's time to do it all again. Morning chores hit you like a brick wall, though you're still bleary-eyed from the scratchy bed and restless sleep. No snooze button here. The first crack of dawn brings a flood of responsibilities that don't wait for you to feel ready. You trudge outside, stepping carefully over stray animal droppings. Remember the turnip incident? Yeah, it's still there. Your breath steams in the cold morning air, and you rub your hands together to chase the chill. The farm or village is already stirring. Chickens cluck loudly, and pigs grunt in their pens, waiting for breakfast just like you. You're expected to fetch water from the well, maybe a good 10 to 20 minutes walk, if you're lucky. Carrying heavy wooden buckets back and forth feels like your arms might fall off, but the water is necessary for everything. Cooking, cleaning, drinking, and sometimes washing yourself, if the day allows. Speaking of washing, hygiene in medieval times is, well, complicated. Baths aren't daily rituals. They're rare events reserved for special occasions or the wealthy elite. Most common folk rely on a quick splash with cold water or rubbing down with a damp cloth. Soap is made from animal fat and wood is effective but harsh and not exactly a spa experience. You scratch an itch on your scalp, guessing it's a bug or two, but you don't have the time or luxury to inspect closely. You head to the latrine, a crude hole in the ground, often shared by several families or neighbors. No flushing mechanism, no privacy, and definitely no toilet paper. People use leaves, moss, or even bits of cloth. If you're unlucky, the latrine might be a good breeding ground for flies and a nasty smell that lingers longer than you'd like. Let's just say it's not a pleasant way to start the day. And then there's the risk of disease. Contaminated water and poor sanitation mean illnesses spread easily: dysentery, cholera, and all those words that make you shiver just thinking about them. Historians still argue whether medieval hygiene was truly worse in later centuries or if some practices were more advanced than we give credit for. But one thing's clear, you wouldn't want to get sick here. Once you're clean enough, it's time to tend to the animals. Feeding chickens, milking cows or goats, mucking out stables, these chores are non-negotiable. The animals aren't just pets. They're food, labor, and survival. Missing a task could mean fewer eggs, less milk, or worsey sick animal that won't pull the plow or produce meat. On the plus side, animals also provide warmth. A big woolly sheep's fleece spun into thick wool keeps you from freezing in winter. You probably have a few scraps of wool clothing, hand-stitched and patched, so many times it's basically a medieval quilt of memories. You hug yourself against the chill, and maybe your cat jumps onto your lap if it's not out hunting rats or just ignoring you. Here's a quirky fact. Some peasants believed that talking to animals would improve their productivity or health. You might find yourself whispering encouragement to your cow, or telling the chickens to lay more eggs. It's not just superstition. It's a way to stay connected when life feels overwhelming. Back to your chores. You're probably helping with planting or harvesting if it's the right season. Medieval farming is backbreaking and slow. Without tractors or machines, every seed is planted by hand. Every weed pulled by fingers raw from work. Tools are simple but heavy. Wooden plows, sickles, hoes. You know the value of a sharp blade because dull ones make everything harder. During busy seasons, your workday stretches from dawn to dusk. The sun rising and setting marks the rhythm of life. There's little time to rest or relax. If you're lucky, you get an hour to eat and drink midday. Often, it's the same pottage or stale bread as last night, eaten standing in the field or at the edge of the forest. Weather complicates everything. Rain means muddy fields and ruined crops. Drought means hunger and fear. Historians still debate how medieval people coped with climate changes and famine cycles, but it's clear they lived with constant uncertainty. You're always watching the sky, praying for sun or at least not a storm. Mid-morning brings more errands, perhaps repairing fences, fetching firewood, or helping your family prepare goods for the market. If you're in a town, maybe you work as a craftsman, blacksmith, or baker. Each trade has its own grueling routine, filled with heat, noise, and repetitive labor. You start noticing aches everywhere. Your back tightens, your fingers blister, your knees throb, and yet this is normal. Your body is built for work, not comfort. Stretching and resting are luxuries few can afford. As noon approaches, you catch a glimpse of yourself in a pond or well water. Your hair is tangled, your face smudged with dirt. You grin faintly, remembering that there are no mirrors except for polished metal land. Even those are rare. You might not be the image of medieval royalty, but you're alive. For now, one last thing, remember that medieval rumor about bathing? Some people believe frequent washing made you more susceptible to disease. So, paradoxically, not bathing might have been safer than regular scrubbing with cold water. It's one of history's odd ironies, and it sparks debate among scholars even today. But for now, you get back to work, because there's no time for daydreaming. There's only the endless list of chores, the animals that need tending, the crops that need planting, and the day that won't wait. The midday sun is high, beating down mercilessly on your back as you pause for what passes as lunch. But don't imagine a picnic basket or a fancy meal. It's a quick bite, often eaten standing up, maybe leaning against the rough bark of a tree or a stone wall. The food is familiar, more pottage, hard bread, maybe some cheese if you're lucky, and water or weak ale, because drinking water still means risking mysterious stomach diseases. You're not alone in this daily ritual. Other villagers gather in small clusters, sharing what little they have and swapping news. The conversations are a mix of gossip, complaints about the weather, and old wives' tales. Someone might mention the latest plague rumors or the strange behavior of the village priest. You listen, nodding, and adding your own 2 cents, because socializing is vitalic, keeps spirits up even when life is tough. Your clothes are sticky with sweat, your skin coated in a fine layer of dirt and grime. You scratch your neck, feeling the familiar itch of lice or fleas, and try not to obsess over it. These pests are just part of medieval life, much like bad Wi-Fi is part of ours. You remind yourself that everyone shares the same struggle and no one escapes the relentless itch. After lunch, the heat makes work harder. You wipe your brow with a grimy sleeve, thankful for a brief breeze. The fields are alive with activity, farmers plowing, children chasing chickens, dogs darting between legs. If you're in a town, the streets are crowded with merchants shouting prices, blacksmiths hammering metal, and apprentices running errands. The smell of smoke, sweat, and fresh bread mixes in the air, creating a unique medieval perfume that's both charming and a little overwhelming. Here's a quirky detail. Some medieval towns had plague doctors, wearing bizarre bird-like masks filled with aromatic herbs. People believed these masks would protect them from disease by filtering the bad air. Of course, the masks didn't help much, but they're a striking symbol of the time's medical misunderstandings. Speaking of medicine, if you get sick, options are limited. Herbal remedies, prayers, and superstition are the norm. Doctors are rare, expensive, and often clueless by modern standards. If you break a bone, it might be set badly or left to heal crooked. Infection is a constant threat. Historians still debate how effective medieval medicine really was, but the survival rates say a lot. Back to your afternoon. You're probably harvesting vegetables, weaving baskets, or tending to the animals again. Every task is physically demanding, with little room for error. You drop a basket, and the fruit bruises. You miss a stitch, and the cloth frays. Small mistakes can mean less food, less income, or more work tomorrow. Despite the hardship, there are moments of joy. Children play simple games, rolling hoops, tossing stones, or chasing each other through the fields. Village festivals bring music, dancing, and rare treats. The church bell rings for weddings or celebrations, momentarily lifting spirits. These glimpses of happiness are precious and fleeting. As the afternoon wanes, you might steal a moment to rest. Maybe you sit on a fence post, watching clouds drift by, or lean against a tree while catching your breath. Your body aches, but you're alive. That's something. Evening approaches, and with it, the cycle begins anew. Chores, dinner, and eventually sleep in the straw-stuffed bed that awaits. The day's grime and fatigue weigh on you, but there's no choice but to keep going. Remember that crooked tooth from the gritty bread? It's probably throbbing by now, but you'll ignore it. Dentistry is primitive, often involving pulling teeth without anesthesia, charming medieval rite of passage you'd rather skip. So you rise from your brief rest and prepare for the next round of work. Because in medieval times, survival isn't about comfort or luxury. It's about endurance, grit, and getting through the day. As the evening sets in, the day's labor finally slows, but your work isn't over. Supper is a humble affair, leftover pottage, maybe some salted fish, or a chunk of preserved meat if you're lucky. Vegetables might be scarce unless you've stored some root crops like turnips or carrots. The smell of cooking wafts through your home, a small comfort in the fading light. Cooking itself is a laborious process. Open hearths require constant attention to keep fires burning without letting the whole kitchen ignite. Pots hang over flames, simmering whatever is edible. The smoke fills the room, making your eyes water. You cough quietly, trying not to wake the baby or irritate your neighbors, both equally likely outcomes. Sharing food is a sacred tradition. You gather around the wooden table with family or roommates, eating from shared bowls with wooden spoons. The bread is hard and dense. Dipping it into the stew is a necessity to soften it up. The meal is eaten quickly because daylight is running out, and the tasks of the evening still beckon. After supper, chores continue. You might mend clothing, sharpen tools, or prepare for the next day's work. Candlelight flickers, casting long shadows on the rough walls. Wax is expensive, so candles are used sparingly, leaving much of the evening in near darkness. Here's a fascinating tidbit. In some medieval homes, people place herbs or dried flowers in the house to combat the pervasive smells of smoke, sweat, and, well, human odor. Lavender, rosemary, and even rue were popular choices. You might find yourself sniffing a sprig, hoping it masks the less pleasant aromas clinging to your tunic. Entertainment is minimal. After the day's toil, storytelling by the hearth is kimono way to pass time and share history or legends. Songs are sung, often in simple tunes that everyone can join. Sometimes, traveling minstrels visit the village, bringing news and excitement. But these moments are rare and treasured. Sleep is still a long way off. Before you can rest, you tend to the animals one last time feeding, securing them from predators and cleaning stalls. Wolves and wild dogs are a real threat in rural areas, especially at night. The thought of their howls outside your window makes the darkness feel colder and more dangerous. If you live in a town, you might attend a late evening prayer service or light a candle at the church. Religion is a central part of daily life, offering comfort and structure. Many believe that the more prayers said, the better protection from misfortune. Historians still debate how deeply these beliefs influenced everyday behavior, but their presence is undeniable. Night falls completely. The village quiets, save for the occasional bark or distant shout. You finally crawl into your straw bed, muscles aching and skin itchy. You pull the thin blankets tight, whisper a prayer, and hope the night passes without incident. Remember that old tale about second sleep? You might awaken later in the night, restless and alert, performing quiet tasks or simply gazing into the dark. It's part of the rhythm, part of the life you've barely begun to understand. As your eyes close, you think about tomorrow, another day of endless chores, uncertain weather, and the faint hope of a better life. Medieval times don't offer comfort or ease. They demand resilience, toughness, and a stubborn will to endure. And yet here you are, still standing, still surviving. You awake to the crowing of the rooster, or maybe a neighbor shouting, because medieval villages are lively places even before dawn. The light filtering through the cracks in the wooden walls doesn't quite fill the room, but it signals that the day has begun again. Stretching feels like a luxury. Your muscles scream in protest. You remind yourself that your body is your most important tool and yet probably the most abused. Morning hygiene is rushed and rudimentary. You might have access to a basin of cold water, but there's no hot shower to rinse away the grime. You wash your face, arms, and hands, trying to scrub off the dirt and the layer of sweat from yesterday's work. You inspect your teeth still coated in grime from the last meal and the coarse bread you've been chewing. Dental care is non-existent beyond the occasional tooth pulling by a barber surgeon, a job you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. Your clothes, patched and faded, are pulled on without much thought. Layers matter a linen shirt beneath a wool tunic, perhaps a cloak if it's cold. The fabrics are rough, itchy, and stained, but they're all you have. Dressing quickly, you step outside, greeted by the smells of the village waking up, smoke from fires, the earthy scent of animals, and the faint tang of herbs drying near windows. Your first task might be to light the hearth fire. This is a critical skill because fires are the heart of medieval homes used for cooking, heating, and protection. You strike flint against steel, coaxing a spark into flame, feeding it with dried twigs and kindling. A roaring fire means warmth, comfort, and safety. A failed fire means a cold, miserable day ahead. Outside, the village is a whirlwind of activity. Children run barefoot over dirt paths, women carry water buckets, men ready tools for the day's labor. The air is filled with the clatter of carts, the neighing of horses, and the chatter of neighbors exchanging greetings or complaints. The community's survival depends on everyone's efforts. No one is truly alone in this world. You head to the fields or workshop, depending on your role. Farming tasks vary by season: plowing, sowing, weeding, or harvesting. In the town, you might be a craftsman, blacksmith, weaver, or bakery with its own exhausting schedule and hazards. For example, blacksmiths work amid roaring furnaces and flying sparks, risking burns and eye injuries daily. Here's a fun fact. Medieval blacksmiths often carried lucky charms, like bits of iron or small stones, believing they would protect against accidents. Superstition was woven into daily life, providing comfort in an unpredictable world. As you labor, the sun climbs higher, heat intensifies, and sweat drips into your eyes. Breaks are few and short. Your hands blister, your back aches, and you wonder how people survive decades under such conditions. Historians still debate the average lifespan of medieval peasants, but most agree it was shockingly low by today's standards, often under 40 years. Lunchtime is a brief pause. You eat more pottage or cold bread, maybe a piece of cheese or salted fish if you're lucky. The food is filling but lacks variety or seasoning. Salt is precious and used sparingly, so meals can be bland. Back to work. Your day is punctuated by small tasks: mending, hauling, feeding, cleaning, that never seem to end. The village's well-being depends on your sweat and endurance. There's a rhythm to it, a repetitive cycle that you begin to recognize. The seasons mark the pace of life as much as the sun and moon. By mid-afternoon, fatigue sets in hard. Your legs are leaden, your fingers numb. But you push on, because rest isn't a choice. Every chore left undone is a risk to survival. As the day winds down, you reflect on your lot. Life in medieval times is relentless, unforgiving, and grueling. Comforts we take for granted: hot showers, soft beds, fresh food, air, luxuries beyond your reach. You realize how tough you have to be just to last one day, let alone a lifetime. And yet, despite it all, there's resilience, a stubborn spark of life that keeps people going, finding joy in small moments: a child's laughter, a shared meal, a quiet sunset. You wipe the grime from your brow and prepare for nightfall again. The cycle is unending, but at least you've survived another day. Night falls again, but the dangers lurking in the darkness are far from bedtime stories. They're very real. You might think the hardest part is the day's toil, but surviving the night in medieval times comes with its own set of challenges. Your home is basic timber, frame, or stone walls, often with gaps that let in cold air, rain, and sometimes uninvited guests. Rodents are everywhere, sneaking around your stored grain or even your bedding. You're constantly on alert for rats, mice, or worse. Fleas and lice feast on you while you sleep, making rest a battle against itching and discomfort. You might be tempted to use herbs or smoke to keep pests away, but those methods only do so much. Outside, the wild animals are a bigger threat. Wolves, foxes, and wild dogs roam near villages, and attacks on livestock or even people aren't unheard of. Some communities organize night watches, groups of men who patrol and keep guard. If you're lucky, you might get a spot on the watch, which at least gets you out of sleeping on the scratchy straw for a few hours. And then there's the ever-present fear of fire. Open hearths, candles, and wooden homes are a dangerous mix. Fires could start from a dropped ember or careless sparks, and whole villages have burned down overnight. You know to keep water buckets and sand nearby, but in panic, chaos spreads faster than flames. Sleep patterns are different too. Many people followed a biphasic sleep cycle, sleeping for a few hours after dusk, waking for an hour or two, then sleeping again until dawn. During the waking period, folks might chat, pray, or even sneak a small snack. It's not insomnia. It's how your body works in a world without artificial light. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some medieval households kept a night candle, a long-lasting beeswax candle lit during the waking hours of the night. It was expensive, but considered a wise investment for safety and comfort. The church played a big role in nighttime life. Bells tolled for the Angelus prayer 3 times daily, including evening and early morning, reminding everyone to pause and reflect. Nighttime prayers and rituals offered solace and a sense of protection against the unknown terrors lurking in the dark. Your bed is a bundle of straw or hay stuffed into a sack. It's scratchy and uncomfortable, but at least it's off the cold floor. You might share it with family, or even animal scats and dogs were often welcome guests to keep mice away. The idea of personal space is very different here. Despite all this, sleep is vital. It's when your body recovers and prepares for another day of hard labor. You close your eyes, but your mind races with worries. Will the crops survive the drought? Will the blacksmith finish repairs in time? Will your neighbor's sick child pull through? Historians still argue how much rest medieval people actually got, but they agree it was fragmented and often interrupted by noise, cold, or illness. Your sleep won't be restful or long, but it's enough to keep you going. As you drift off, you're wrapped in a cocoon of rough blankets and whispered prayers. The night stretches ahead, dark and uncertain, but you face it with quiet determination. Because surviving the day was only half the battle, surviving the night is the other. Dawn breaks again, and with it, the endless cycle of medieval life grinds on. But today feels different. There's an uneasy tension in the air. Rumors have spread that the local lord plans to raise taxes. You hear whispers from the market, hushed conversations in the tavern. Everyone knows what this means. More work, less food, and an even harder life. You swallow the lump in your throat and prepare for what's coming. Taxes in medieval times weren't just about coins. Often they were paid in kind grain, livestock, or labor. Your family might owe a share of the harvest or be called to work on the Lord's lands for free, known as corvée labor. This system kept peasants under the thumb of nobles, a cycle of control that few could escape. You trudge to the fields, already tired, carrying the weight of more than just your tools. Your shoulders ache under the burden, and you wonder how anyone can survive such demands year after year. The sun beats down, relentless as ever. Interestingly, some medieval peasants resisted these harsh conditions in subtle Westlow work, sabotaging equipment or simply refusing to pay what they couldn't afford. Historians still argue whether these small acts of defiance significantly impacted the feudal system or were just isolated incidents. Back in the village, daily life continues amid the hardship. Children run barefoot, their laughter a bittersweet contrast to the heavy realities around them. Women gather at wells, exchanging news and offering support. You catch snippets of their conversations, some hopeful, others resigned. Your hands are cracked and calloused, evidence of years spent tilling soil and handling rough tools. You pause to rub a particularly painful blister, knowing it will only worsen. Medical care is minimal, and infections are a constant threat. Folk remedies and prayers are your best bet, but often they fail. A quirky fact: some peasants believed that wearing a piece of iron or carrying a charm could ward off evil spirits and illness. Whether it worked or not, it gave people a sense of control in a frightening world. Your stomach growls hunger is a frequent companion. Meals are simple and repetitive, but skipping food isn't an option. Weak from undernourishment, your energy wanes, making labor harder and more dangerous. Malnutrition was widespread, contributing to the short lifespans of the era. Still, you find small joys, a kind word from a neighbor, the sight of blooming wildflowers, or the taste of a fresh apple during harvest. These moments are fleeting but precious. As the day ends, you reflect on the endless cycle of toil, fear, and hope. Medieval life is harsh, but it's also alive with resilience and community. You might not survive long, but you're here now living the story. The days blur into one another, but every so often, an event breaks the monotony. A festival, a market day, or a visit from the traveling preacher. These moments bring color and noise to the gray backdrop of your medieval world, offering a glimpse of something beyond survival. Market day is a rare luxury. Villagers gather with their goods, vegetables, wool, pottery, or handmade tools to barter and sell. The marketplace buzzes with life. Merchants shout their wares, children dart between stalls, and animals jostle for space. The air is thick with smells fresh bread, livestock, spices brought from distant lands. You try to haggle for a better price, but with limited coin and limited goods, there's little leverage. Sometimes, you exchange services or goods, directly bartering a basket of eggs for a bundle of cloth. Money is scarce, and credit is risky, so people rely on trust and community networks. An odd medieval fact. Some towns had market cries, loud calls merchants used to announce their products. These cries could be quite elaborate, almost like early advertising jingles. Imagine a fishmonger yelling a catchy tune while you dodge chickens in carts. Entertainment at market day is simple but vital. Minstrels perform ballads and tell stories of knights and dragons, bringing fantasy to the dusty square. Children watch wide-eyed, while adults momentarily forget their daily struggles. Festival days are even more special. Celebrations tied to religious holidays, harvests, or local saints bring the entire village together. Feasts, dances, and games light up the village, and for a few hours, laughter replaces worry. You might join a dance circle, stepping awkwardly but smiling anyway. Music is played on fiddles, flutes, and drums, filling the air with joyful noise. The food is richer, too meat, sweets, and spiced wine for those who can afford it. Historians still debate how inclusive these festivals were, whether peasants truly participated freely or if they were obliged by their lords to attend and celebrate, even while struggling. As night falls on these rare days, the sense of community feels stronger. You lie awake longer, savoring the warmth of companionship and the promise that life, despite its hardships, holds moments worth living for. Remember that second sleep pattern from before? On festival nights, it might be delayed or even skipped, as revelers enjoy the rare joy of carefree celebration. When the festival ends, the hard reality returns, but you carry those memories like small treasures. They remind you that even in the toughest times, human spirit finds ways to shine. The seasons shape your life more than any calendar ever could. Spring brings hope, but also relentless work, as you prepare fields and sow seeds. Summer's heat is brutal, drying your skin and making every task exhausting. Autumn offers a brief respite with harvest festivals and the chance to store food for winter. But winter is a battle of endurance, where the cold bites deep and hunger gnaws at your belly. You wrap yourself in layers of wool and linen, trying to keep the chill from seeping into your bones. Fires burn low, and daylight is short, limiting what you can accomplish. The snow and mud make travel nearly impossible, isolating you from nearby villages and markets. Winter illness escapes, fevers, and worse spread easily in cramped homes. Medical knowledge is limited, and herbal remedies offer scant relief. You watch your neighbors weaken, sometimes succumb, and it reminds you of your own fragility. A quirky medieval note. People believed in winter spirits or wild hunts roaming the frozen nights, causing misfortune. To protect themselves, they might leave out food or light special candles. These superstitions gave meaning to the otherwise harsh and mysterious season. Food scarcity is a harsh reality now. Stored grains might be moldy or infested with pests. Fresh vegetables are gone. You rely on salted or dried meat, hard bread, and whatever root vegetables you manage to store. Meals become thinner and more frequent. Small bites replace hearty dishes. Survival depends on careful rationing, community support, and a fair bit of luck. Historians still debate how medieval societies coped collectively with famine, whether charity networks existed or if everyone just struggled individually. You huddle close to family or neighbors for warmth, sharing stories and strength. The long nights become a time for reflection and planning, dreaming of the coming spring. Despite the hardship, winter teaches resilience and patience. The earth sleeps now, but beneath the frost, life waits. Soon, the cycle will begin again, and with it, the chance to grow, work, and maybe, just maybe, thrive. You lie awake sometimes, listening to the wind howl outside, grateful for the fire's glow and the shared breath of those around you. Medieval life is harsh, unforgiving, and at times terrifying, but it's also a testament to human endurance in the face of relentless challenge. You've lived through seasons, festivals, and daily struggles, but perhaps the hardest reality to accept is that medieval times offer very little in the way of personal freedom or security. Your life is largely dictated by birthborn to peasants, and you remain so, tied to the land and the will of your lord. Ambitions are constrained, and dreams often deferred or crushed by harsh circumstances. Marriage, for example, isn't just about love, it's a strategic alliance, a way to secure land, labor, or alliances. Your choices are limited, and the family you create is your safety net, but also your obligation. Raising children is fraught with anxiety. Infant mortality rates were staggering. Many never survived their first year. You protect your little ones fiercely, but worry shadows every cough or fever. Justice in medieval society is rough and often brutal. Local lords hold courts where punishments can be severe fines, flogging, or worse. You might find yourself caught in petty disputes or accused unfairly, with little chance for fair appeal. Violence is a real and constant threat, from bandits on roads to conflicts within the village. Here's a curious detail. Some villages developed night walkers, groups who enforced local justice or guarded against thieves. Their authority was sometimes informal but respected community policing before the term existed. Spiritual life offers solace amid the chaos. The church is everywhere shaping your worldview, morals, and daily rhythm. You pray for protection, forgiveness, and a better afterlife. Pilgrimages or indulgences promise salvation but require sacrifice you can barely afford. Historians still debate how much medieval religion was a source of genuine comfort versus social control, but its role in daily life is undeniable. As you lie down after another grueling day, you reflect on your place in this vast, harsh world. You are small against the backdrop of history, but your life matters. Each breath you take, each hardship you endure, is a testament to your strength. You wouldn't survive a day in medieval times not without grit, luck, and a stubborn will to live. And yet, here you are, somehow still standing. Now, as the story settles like the last embers of a dying fire, you can feel the weight of those days fading away. The rough edges soften, the harsh smells and biting cold drift into quiet shadows. You breathe slowly, letting the imagined world slip gently into a distant dreamscape. Remember, the struggles you've heard are echoes from a time far removed where life demanded everything and gave little in return. But also remember the resilience, the tiny sparks of joy, the human connections that shone through the darkness. Rest easy now. Let the calm wrap around you like a soft blanket. The past is behind you, and your world is warm, safe, and full of possibility. Close your eyes, let the night carry you, peaceful and steady.